Welcome everyone to this podcast episode. This has been another long-awaited one with the beautiful Robyn Newton. She has got an incredible story to share with you, and she is such an inspiration. One of the reasons that I wanted to get Robyn on for a very long time is that we met probably a couple of years ago when she came onto the release course. And she decided to do some ongoing group coaching with me. And towards the end of the first round of the Embody group, she actually received a diagnosis, which she will share with you. And my instant thought was, I hope this woman continues with this work. It's so powerful. And I love that she did. She did choose, and she has chosen to continue working together with me in a group, not one-to-one. And it has been amazing to watch her navigate her journey and her healing and recovery, and to not just drop everything and, I guess, go fully into the conventional world. So it's just been so beautiful to watch. And the conversation that we were having just before we jumped on, which I really wanted to share, is that some people would say, but hang on, she was doing your work. Why did she receive a diagnosis? And this work is about preventing as much as possible, but navigating the challenges that will and still do come up. And I feel like Robyn is just such an amazing example of navigating it all, and the groups that she has been in, the different people that have been around her have really just loved her energy. Not that there haven't been downs, but it's just been so beautiful. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Robyn, to introduce yourself, tell us what the diagnosis was, and we will just riff from there.
Oh, thank you, Jen. And thanks for having me on this morning. So yeah, in March 2022, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was a shock, to say the very least. It had come about because I had a swollen lymph gland in my left axilla. And initially they thought that I was just having a really strong reaction to the Pfizer vaccine. And so many people were having reactions that were manifesting in that way. But it turned out that it wasn't. It was after a lot of testing and scans and things, I eventually had a biopsy done of that lymph node, and it came back that it was malignant cells. So very quickly they rushed to find out where the primary site was of the breast cancer, because the lymph is the secondary site. And very deep in my chest and my leaf breast, they found the cancerous lump. So everything sort of went from there. But what I want to say, just also pre that diagnosis and pre-finding you, is that I personally feel that everything happens exactly as it should. Now, I know that can be confronting for some people who have had horrific stuff happen, but for me, I really feel that everything is and has happened exactly as it's supposed to. And that includes meeting you and being in your groups. So I had, how I learnt about you was in 2018, I had taken a book out of the library, which was written by your friend Kate Callahan. And it was a book about holistic health, and I loved it. I read that book and I thought it was fantastic, gave it back to the library, never thought about it. And then in 2021, during COVID or somewhere through that period, I thought, oh, I wonder if that book's still at the library. It was, so I got it out again. And then I thought, because by then I was actually on social media or looking at social media, I thought, I wonder if I can find this woman. And I did. I found her Instagram page, and I learned that she had passed from breast cancer. Scrolling through her page, I saw that she had done a podcast with you, and I listened to it, and everything that you were saying to her was sort of like ping, ping, ping. And at some point you said to her, have you worked on your emotions? And I feel that everything sits underneath it's emotion. I was like, oh my God, this woman's amazing, Jen. And that's how I came into your environment, into the release course. And it's not by accident. It's not by accident that I started working with you when I received the diagnosis, because it's all happening for me exactly as it's supposed to. So yeah, breast cancer, it's major.
I just want to say that's really beautiful to hear, because I did not know that is how we came to cross paths, and I just get chills as I listen to that, especially mentioning the beautiful Kate Callahan, who was she was the first interview that I did, and she still connects me with people, even though she's no longer in the physical realm.
That's right. And nothing is for nothing, Jen, and that the energy of her, you talk about legacy work, the legacy of her, she's made an impact on my life. I never met her. But I read her book. I've, come to know you and more of her story. So, it just, nothing is for nothing.
It's amazing. And so are you.
Yeah.
I believe that you're going to be leaving a legacy by recording this and sharing your story. So tell us a little bit more. What went through your mind when you received that diagnosis? Because I remember we were in the group and you were telling us about this lump, and we're like, okay, well, maybe it is because of that.
Hearing that news, that you have malignant cells, it was my GP who told me. It really is. It's like the world just comes, blah, 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 Constantine is in on you. It is definitely the most frightening thing I've ever heard, and shocking thing I've ever heard. And I feel that it feels like time stands still, is standing still, and yet there's a million thoughts piling in. And the first thought is, am I going to die? So, immediately being confronted with my own mortality, and then thinking about my husband, my family, all that sort of stuff. That day that I found out we were meant to be having we did actually, a luncheon for a gorgeous kid that I've known since she was little. She was going over to the UK. So we were having our last sort of family lunch with her. I just proceeded to get drunk. Because I didn't know what else to do. I was so shocked. I had about, I don't know, probably a bottle of Prosecco in the afternoon. And that's the last that I drank. I've had a couple of glasses of wine, but that was just, I don't know what to do with this. Hand me that glass of wine, leave my body. That's essentially what I was doing. I was leaving my body. I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. It was just a few days before my 3rd wedding anniversary with my husband. So, I'm looking around. I'm thinking, I've only been married for 3 years and now this is happening. It's just, it's just a shocking thing to hear. You never think it's going to happen to you until it does. And I think that's true with so many things in life. You never think it's going to happen to you, and then it does. And then, things just start to move very, very quickly. So I had to have a lot of tests and scans for them to find the tumor. That didn't happen straight away. And it was really, I had incredible moments of clarity where I thought, okay, how do I want to come at this? This is before I'd even met anyone at the Chris O'Brien Lifehouse where I was treated. How do I want to come at this? I wrote everything down. I rang my naturopath that I was seeing at the time. I had a fantastic conversation with her, and she said to me, Robyn, they won't let you take any herbs or supplements or anything like that. I was shocked to hear that, but I was glad that I heard it, because that was actually true. They were really strong about not letting me take anything that they thought would interfere with the chemotherapy that I ended up having. So I rang my naturopath. I rang a guy that I work with in New Zealand who works with sound, just to talk through things with him. And I rang a kinesiologist, I emailed a kinesiologist that I'd had quite a few sessions with in 2019 and asked her to see me. But she couldn't. So she put me in touch with another kinesiologist in Sydney, who's probably the best kinesiologist here. And I started working with her. So I had this sort of little team around me. And then I had you and I was in the embody space by that stage, and the other coaches and the people in that group. And of course, my husband, my family, and a lot of spiritual support. I really took a lot from spirit. So, I had my first session with the with the breast surgeon, and he explained to me what was happening. And they again hit me like a ton of bricks, because I just didn't actually realize the gravity and the seriousness of it. I had always felt that if I was ever in this situation, I would never have chemotherapy, never take the Western route. I would always go down the natural homeopathic, because that's how I was brought up. And all of a sudden I'm getting all this information about how they're treating me, and they're moving fast because it's aggressive. And I was constantly working with trying to pull myself out of shock and fear, and wonder, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do with this? They believed that there was a tiny little bit in my spine, so I had to have that piece biopsied. And I'd never been in a hospital before, and it was actually a novelty to me. Which
tell us the story of like the names of your surgeon, the nurse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Back to that was quite funny.
Yeah. So I talk about my team. My GP was Dr. Faith Wang. So, I had Faith. The breast surgeon was Dr. Sanjay Warrior. So I had the Warrior. And then I met a beautiful nurse one day when I was being biopsied, and I think her name was Hope, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, beautiful. So I had all these little people that I was meeting along the way, and I was coining, Faith, the Warrior, Hope.
And I think it was a chi in there as well. And you're like,
oh yeah, there was a chi. Yeah, there was a chi, an energy. Yeah, that's right. You remembered that. Yeah. And so there's all these little words that are in people, that are coming to me that, I'm drawing on so much more than their expertise or what they're there. I was saying it as a sign of, Robyn, it's all forming around you. It's all. So
it was quite funny. And I remember just having, like, we were all laughing as a group. It's like, well, Robyn's going through breast cancer, she's getting treatment, but she's still seeing how these signs are flowing to her. And we all had a big laugh about it. And it was quite amazing. I didn't realize there was a hope in there as well.
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, I very quickly went into the hospital system. I did nominate to take the Western, the Western way of being treated, which was chemotherapy, surgery, followed by radiation. In there's a whole lot of other little things they're giving you at the time, steroids and goodness knows what else, particularly while I was on chemotherapy. I made that. I don't know if I was fully grounded in making that choice, but it was made and I was on it. It's like going on a water slide, one of those ones like a tunnel, you go in and you've just got to go in. And I knew at some point I'd be spewed out the other end, and I had to make the most of what I still had around me, even if I wasn't popping herbs and taking supplements and that, to hold myself going through all of the treatment and all of the experiences. So, when I look back on it in hindsight, I can really see the value in the way I was doing things, working with energy, or working with what my beliefs were, what I feel held me and supported me. And it didn't mean that I was any less disadvantaged because I wasn't taking certain herbs or things that, I really in the beginning believed I needed to help me with my immunity. But I had sort of reconciled with myself, I'm going to go through this treatment. I'm going to do whatever I can on the levels that I want to work with. And then when I come out at the end of it, then I work at rebuilding myself in that physical way. But something I found really, really interesting with it is I had to have weekly blood tests before each chemotherapy just because of my blood. And the oncologist used to say to me, Robyn, I cannot believe how well your liver is taking everything. Like, it's just blown me out of the water. We are hitting you with the hardest stuff, like the nuclear bomb of chemo, and your liver is just handling it. And I truly believe it's because I was clearing so much emotion through releasing and working with all the anger, fear, anxiety, stress. It was my body was clearing, and it was therefore able to take whatever was being put into it. That's what I believe.
Can I just
in the blood test? Yeah.
The biggest thing that I've gotten from this is that you've had this upbringing and a belief, very spiritual, homeopathic and natural, and you were open to the conventional.
Yeah.
But you had this team around you. So all of a sudden you didn't have to try and find all these new people. You had a relationship with people, you trusted them.
Yeah.
And just talking about you processing the emotion, liver is the organ of anger. And then there was a whole bunch of other stuff that was coming up. And there's a few people that I'm thinking of in particular that I really want them to hear this, because you will get told that when you take a certain drug, for whatever reason it might be, not necessarily with cancer, is that there can be these side effects. And what I often like to share with people is, and you'll know evidence and proof of this, is that you don't have to experience those side effects unless you really believe, but it's going to take a lot of work. And you've been doing the work long before we met. And this is where I say the work of processing your emotions opens space for so much more. And like, it's not just about processing emotions, is that anything is possible. And to have the doctors then give you that feedback that your liver is not getting affected, but you did this work before you got diagnosed. You've been doing it long beforehand. So that is just incredible, because let us know, how did you handle the chemo, the radiation, which most of the time we would assume that it would really knock someone around.
The chemotherapy, it's not a walk in the park. It's pretty confronting. Not only the treatment itself, but just being in a chemotherapy ward. There's a certain energy in it. It's very heavy, and it's very dense. There's a lot of trauma and grief and fear in there that I could feel. I could hear people having not so great experiences. But for me personally, it honestly, overall, when I look back on it, and actually even when I was in it, it actually felt like a bit of a breeze. And I feel that that's because, firstly, I was really, I remember the first time I went to have my chemotherapy session, and you go and you sit and you wait, and you're waiting with all these other people, and they take you in. Actually, I just digress a little bit. Before I actually had the chemotherapy, I met this great nurse. They do an induction with you, and they take you through the ward, and they just show you, where you're going, what it's like. And when I was talking to her, she said to me, I want you to remember, Robyn, that you are not sick. You're not sick. You have some rogue cells that are going a bit nuts in your body, but you are not sick. And there is no reason why you can't do the things that you're already doing in your life because of this diagnosis. So if you're exercise, keep exercising. There were all these things that she was saying, basically, keep your life as normal as possible. And I took that as, don't hand myself over to the disease or the treatment. Like, yes, this is happening in my life, and it's major, it's huge, it's impacting. But this is part of my life. It's not my whole life. So, going into chemotherapy, I just felt very clear about I'm having these appointments once. I think they were fortnightly for the first 4, and then after that it was weekly. And while I was there, I would have that experience, and then in the rest of the time, what I was doing was living with this diagnosis, living with it being the operative word, and not and just keeping myself in a space so that when I did go and have that appointment on a Friday, I was as good as I could be. So I remember sitting on the first one, and I just sat, and I was doing this before I even started chemotherapy. I was doing it before I had all the scans in there. I would sit in the waiting room where I was, and I would just breathe. I would visualize where my father is from in New Zealand. My father's from Whakatane. He's from where he grew up in Whakatane. I would visualize, like I felt like I was on one of those things with the camera and a drone. I would visualize myself coming in. I could see the bay, I could see the water, I could see the land, I could see our marae. I would sit and visualize all of that. And then I would just ask my ancestors to come through and just be around me. I would ask all my grandparents in spirit, great grandparents, my aunties, uncles, whoever, all in spirit to come around me, ex-boyfriend in spirit, cat, everyone. I would just ask them to be with me. I would then just sit and breathe and just say, if anyone else wants to come forward, and faces would come forward, different ones every week. But normally my father would be the first to arrive. I'd see his face, my sister, my mother, my husband, anyone else, the embodiers. And I just took it also on the goodwill that people cared about me and loved me. I just believed in the love that people had for me. And I would take that with me through the ward into the room. So I would sort of sit and think, I would laugh and say, it's amazing those staff could get in that room. There were thousands of us in there. Because I had all my team of spirit and everyone. And then, I really made it my own experience. I took room sprays. I took crystals. I had big chunks of crystal in my hands, on my lap. One of my friends had had breast cancer, did a parcel of crystals for breast cancer specifically. I had those in my lap. Another friend had painted stones for me. I had a couple of those. One of the women in Body, Suzanne, had made me some essential oil blends, which I couldn't put on my skin. So I just hold them in my hands. I had Bach flower essences that I was taking. I had affirmations. I made playlists. I turned up with music, which I'd have blaring in the room. I'd have, really nice food to eat, all that sort of stuff. And I just really made that experience almost like a party, I have to say. And the staff would say to me, and my sister or my husband or, who was with me, we love it when you come in because you're raising the energy. And, I knew what I was doing and I knew why for me, but, they were feeling it. So yeah, it was, and then I'd just go afterwards, after I'd have chemotherapy, go and have lunch and then go secondhand shopping, buy some clothes. So, it actually turned into sort of like a really fun thing on a Friday. And, as far as the chemotherapy itself, I didn't subscribe to it. I did a lot of work with the actual drug and the machine and the needle that they'd put into my arm because it hurt sometimes and it scared me. So that's when I used the release process that I learned from you, and every time I released with that chemotherapy, when it spoke back to me, it would say to me, I am trying to help you. I am wanting to help you. And I could just rest in that. that's what it was there for. I'd confronted that fear that that's what that drug was there for. And then, I could come back to myself and say, trust yourself, trust your decision, trust the people that are helping you, but trust everything that you're doing for yourself. But particularly, I think more than anything, my belief in all the support I had in spirit, I honestly felt like I was being carried through all of it, and I have felt like that the whole time. It's in those moments where it's such a singularly scary thing to be, in that hospital, to remind myself that I have all of the support around me, and I always will, and I always have. Thank you.
That's
what They're all on my wall. They're all there. Thank you.
That, I think, has been one of the biggest reasons why it's been such a pleasure to actually watch you go through your breast cancer experience. Surgery, chemo, radiation, beforehand, out the other end of the water slide. It's never been a sad experience for me. I don't know how others have been affected, but the energy never dropped in our group because Robyn's been diagnosed with breast cancer, because Robyn's having chemo. And I remember we all contributed songs to your playlist, and you actually asked for that, which was really nice, rather than someone coming up with that suggestion. I really love how you talked about that you did releases. You're just like a star with actually implementing the releases and all the variations of, because one of my big things is that some people, I meet some people, or I hear stories of some people who are like, no, I do not want to do the chemical conventional route at all. That once you're confronted with this diagnosis, you might change, and that's okay. There may have been this previous judgment, but until you're in those shoes, you don't know how you're going to respond. And actually, for me, one of the big things when I'm working with clients is, can I get you to be at peace and try and make some sort of grounded decision and change your belief and perspective around these drugs that you may have been resistant to, and to actually, chemo, it's full of chemicals, whatever, but actually in this situation, that the chemo drug talks back to you and says, I'm actually here to help you. And when you can believe that and come to peace with it, it's amazing. So I really love that you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I had some side effects of it. It pushed me into early menopause. But I didn't have anywhere near the experience that, some of the other people, nowhere near the experience that some of the other people I met were having with it. I didn't lose my appetite. If anything, I gained, and I really felt heartened by that, because eating, not only because I love food, but, eating, having a good appetite means not only for food, but for life. I craved different things, and then I'd stop eating it because I didn't feel like it. I walked every day, which I've always done. So, sometimes some of those walks weren't as easy, if I was very tired, but I'd do it just to keep moving, to be outside, to be in nature, to be supported by, the environment around me. I remember when I was 21 or 22, my mother took me to see a medium for the first time. To actually have a one-on-one reading. And this woman was incredible. And she said to me at the time, whenever you're feeling down, go outside, get outside. Nature is the greatest healer. Just get on that doorstep and step out and walk and just see what's around you. And it's so true. I see, there's someone's little cat, and I never knew that plant had a flower, and all those things that are immensely supportive to me, because how I feel about land, where I come from, all that sort of stuff.
And I'll just say that you live in Sydney, so it's
So I live in I mean, I live very close to the city as well, but it's all here. It's not like roaming the hills where you live, Jim, which I would love to do, but it's still all here. And you make it's a beautiful harbour. That's a big bonus.
Mm.
So yeah, there were all those little things. It just didn't knock me around. I didn't, I didn't have bad sleep, but I had to learn. I didn't have great sleep, but I had to learn to rest during the day and just, put my head down and go to sleep. So I guess there's a couple of other things I just want to say that happened really early on. I'm not a massive researcher, so I didn't go down Google. I didn't look at anything. I really took and I spoke to the surgeon about this. I said, what you tell me is what you tell me. I'm not Googling anything. I'm not looking. I'm not trying to diagnose anything. And he said to me, Robyn, you have to trust me. And I said, I do. And he put his hand on me. He said, you really have to trust me. I said, I do trust you, Sanjay, but I trust myself more. And that was really significant for me to say, yeah, I know that you're there and you're doing this and you're doing your best and you take it very seriously, but I also trust myself that I can do what I need to do to get through this diagnosis. So I'd taken this book out of the library. It was called Heal. I can't remember who it's by. There's also a video on it or a show, maybe on Netflix. But anyway, in that book, it refers to some work by a doctor called Dr. Kellyanne Turner, who's written 2 books, Radical Remission and Radical Acceptance. And I read both of those books. And the thing that I really loved about them was she talked about 10 key points for people who had had incredible diagnosis and had gone into what would be considered spontaneous remission or healed. 3 of the things were physical: food, exercise, supplements. The other 7 were all what I considered the really important things. And they were reasons for living. So being, why do you want to live? Empowering myself, increasing positive emotions, releasing negative emotions or suppressed emotions, following my intuition, spirituality, and asking for support. So when you say about asking for songs, yeah, that was one of the things that I did. Please send me music, because I love music that I can listen to in the hospital, and learning to ask for help from people. Can you please cook something for us? Can you please make sure that my husband's okay? Can you please come with me and do this? And I'd never done that before. So, that was, I had to start to do things in a different way to find my strength.
And I love that you actually did take that advice on board. And that was a beautiful summary of the 3 things that were physical, and then that you actually remember, and you must remember it because you did it and embodied it.
Yeah.
The 7 other things, like asking for support, because it was hard for you, but you did it anyway.
Yeah. Oh, look, this whole thing. Well, I would say this, Jen, because I didn't want to get into a victim mindset about, oh God, why has this happened to me? What about, But the obvious question is, why is this happening to me?
That was my next question.
That answer came to me immediately, why it was happening to me. Or not even why it's happening to me. What is one of the biggest lessons to learn from this experience? And I believe, and it's ongoing. It didn't just come with getting diagnosed. It's to love myself, to learn to love myself, and to find the peace that comes with that real love of myself. So, when I was first diagnosed, people would be like, but you're the healthiest person we know. You exercise, you meditate, you eat well, you go to a naturopath, you blah, 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 blah. How could you go, people would be looking, thinking, well, God, if that's happening to her. And it's true, I was doing all those things like a little mechanical robot There was no love in it. It was like a long to-do list of if I do this, this, and this, then I'm going to be this.
Having the masculine approach.
Yeah, very masculine. It was not coming from a place of love. In fact, it was being driven by fear. It was being driven by fear of getting sick, whatever that meant. Or not of getting sick, of not being healthy. But there was no tenderness to it. There was no deep loving care or compassion for myself in it. I was like, yeah, I've got up, I've done qigong, yeah, tick, I've meditated, okay, yeah, I've had that healthy breakfast, now I'm going for a walk, blah, blah, blah. I was exhausted, and if anything, I was stressed.
It's amazing, because we talk about that a lot, don't we, in our groups, and whenever release comes along, is that how much people take a masculine approach to self-care, when actually self-care is about nurturing. It's the feminine, it's about receiving. And so you just said it beautifully in your example, is like it became a checklist, it became a task, which it then defeats the purpose a lot of the time.
And it became a bit of a badge of honor too, you know, of like, yeah, I am so healthy, aren't I?
I've got a couple of questions, so I'm just going to ask them so that I don't forget. So it was, what is the lesson? But before that, is you were getting blood test results that showed that your liver wasn't being so affected or affected by the chemotherapy, even though it was a common side effect. The nurses were loving when you came in with your energy, and you were able to speak up to say, I trust you, but I trust myself more. And I think that a lot of the time when people have got this side, the spiritual, emotional awareness about the mind-body connection and the power of emotions to them, they feel like that when they're in that environment that they can't speak up about it. So first, I love that you spoke up and said, I trust myself more. But did anyone ever ask you, Robyn, what are you doing to not have these side effects and to be able to navigate this journey like you are, especially the conventional medicine type people? Were they ever curious as to how you were navigating this journey so well? Or did you ever share with them?
I shared a little bit with my oncologist, who I really, really like, but he's very, very in the Western mindset, and he kind of eye roll at me and but the drug, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I didn't need to get into a competition with him. It was, you know, how I felt it. So no, and in answer to that question, no. I think, you know, I think in the chemo ward, I think that they were just relieved that I was, in a funny way, kind of bringing something, not taking something to them. And the warrior, who was the breast surgeon, you know, really believed in the skills that he has and what he does. He got a little bit teary with me at one stage, one day when I was talking to him, just about how I felt the experience was for me. I think he got it on a level, but he wasn't going to go into that conversation with me. No, they didn't, but I
think what I'm getting from this, though, in how you're expressing it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it didn't matter if they understood you.
It didn't. It absolutely didn't. It didn't. It wasn't about that. You know,
and I got that from when you said I didn't need to get in a competition with him.
No, yeah, it was really just about me being me and them being them. And you know, in hindsight, I look back on it, and I'd actually had this really great conversation with my original naturopath, because I've got a new one now. But we had this conversation about the fact that Western stuff can sit alongside alternative stuff. Like, there's a place for both. There really is. Yeah. And it turned out that I had to go into a experience where I was leaning more into the Western than I ever have in my life. But there's a place for it alongside my own stuff, and that was something that I had to reconcile within myself. It kind of had nothing to do with them. Yeah, and take all of that out of it, take the treatment out of it. It's not lost on me that I was being treated in one of the best hospitals in Australia, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. It's a 15-minute walk from my house. So I walked up there, I was walking up there sometimes 3 times a day. So I was back and forth. It's an incredible facility with incredible people, not only the people that work there, but the people that are being treated there. And I am incredibly thankful and grateful for what I received there, not only in treatment, but just in lessons and compassion and in love and in understanding, that cancer isn't a result of me doing anything right or wrong. It's completely indiscriminate. But for me, the way I feel about things spiritually, it's a big lesson,
But can we go into that? And before I get you to answer, I'd love to share, if it's okay, what I probably shared with you around why is it that this area in your body is affected. And it ties in with the love piece. So it's your heart chakra, which is about love, conditional and unconditional love. The ultimate is to have an unconditional love that goes actually beyond your family and for strangers and people that disagree with you. It's about connection, belonging, and forgiveness. What I find is that when people are very new to personal development in the spiritual world, is they bypass all the negative stuff and they try and go straight to forgiveness by convincing themselves. And I feel it doesn't work. So in our work, what we do is really acknowledge and process the negative. And so the negative emotions being stored in that part of the body that, for whatever reason, chose to express itself in breast cancer for you, is about processing resentment, hatred, jealousy, sense of injustice, betrayal. And usually what I find is that has a really strong link to the sacral chakra. So it's usually that you've got these feelings, you're harboring and storing these feelings in relation to people that you have a relationship with, be it work colleagues, family, ex-partners, current partner, children, etc. So with that, then we went into, okay, it's your left side that's affected, which can have to do with females in your life. So you explored that. And then also, what about my own feminine energy? And you just described that there was a part of your life with self-care that was actually very masculine versus, can I approach this with love? And I've seen you shift and change gears with that. And then the ultimate is, all right, how can I explore now and play with, how can I love myself more, start with myself and then others. So with that, and you may not talk about that at all, but what is it that you learned from this experience of breast cancer?
Well, I'm still learning it, Jen. It's really interesting. My husband and I use this little quote from Brian Weiss, "Only love is real." And we say that to each other all the time. We had it on a little thing at our wedding, only love is real. And for me, that means, well, I feel that love is the most powerful energy in the world, I believe our heartfelt energy, our heart energy is more powerful than anything. So, but, that's one thing to say it. It's another thing to feel it and then to use it. And it's an ongoing experience. It's something that it's like a muscle, you have to make it grow stronger. So the stuff with the cancer is ongoing. because I'm going to be monitored now for, quite a long time. So, that brings up fear. And then I have to remember that only love is real. How am I going to work with the fear? What am I going to do with it? Release with it, feel it, acknowledge it, be with it, and then just, let it come and go of its own volition, but always understanding that if I'm doing things from a place of love, like I'm working that muscle, I'm building that vibration, then, I'm not only strengthening myself, but I'm strengthening what's around me. We talk about healing, we talk about this feminine side, the female line on both sides of my family, my ancestry, the stuff that's come up for me in the healings that I've had to do with feminine energy, my energy and the energy that's gone before me, because that's all in me. My mother's, my father's, my grandmother's, it's all in me. So not only am I doing this for me, I'm doing whatever I do, the healing, I'm doing it for them. Now, whether that's realized in their life or not, I don't know. But how I feel about energy is that nothing is for nothing, and we talk about, shifts that we can have and feel with people. And that's because of the necessity for me to keep doing the work, to keep coming home to my own heart. And when I'm in that place, then I'm not saying it's comfortable all the time, because it's not, but it's the safest, most loving place for me to be. So I just feel like what the whole cancer experience has done is kind of set me up for life. As strange as that sounds, it's kind of set me up for how I choose very consciously now to live my life. And in the environment that I've been in with you, the other coaches, having Ania, and again, nothing for nothing, I meet this woman who's had an experience with brain cancer, who has really worked through it in her own way, in such an inspiring way. And how fortunate am I that I crossed paths with her. And one of her mantras, if you like, is I choose what chooses me. And I took so much heart from that as well, because I move out of, not that I was ever in it, but I'm not looking at this as, why is this happening to me? As Ani would say, why is it happening for me?
Yeah.
And I believe that, I feel that, in the strangest of ways, Jen, it has felt like a gift. I met a woman at the hospital, same age as me, same type of cancer that I was diagnosed with.
Can I ask what sort of cancer it was? I know people will probably be curious.
Oh, yeah. So look, it's interesting. They didn't know what stage it was. They didn't know whether to call it stage 2 or stage 4, because they weren't sure if it was stage 4. That's because there was a little piece in my spine. So they didn't classify me as anything. They just had all these question marks, stage 2, stage 4, about 10 question marks. So they didn't actually have a hard, and to be perfectly honest, I wasn't subscribing to any of it. To me, it was just words on a piece of paper. It's rogue cells in my body and words on a piece of paper. And I
didn't give it a name or
HER2 negative.
Okay, thanks for that.
HER2 negative.
just because I know there's so many different types, and then people will often want to hear the evidence of like, okay, you had HER2 negative, maybe it was stage 2, maybe it was stage 4. And I'm actually really happy that you weren't given a stage, because sometimes we hear not great prognosis about stage 4, but you also had Cynthia that I think you connected with, who was HER2 positive, who was stage 4 and is completely fine now. So yeah, people just want to hear, okay, you had HER2 negative and you got through it, and this is the route you took.
You know, and you know, it was, I mean, just to touch on Cynthia, you know, I had a conversation with her, and we took very different routes of treatment, the way, but I found her incredibly inspiring. I remember getting off the call from her and just going, yes, you know, I can do this, you know, because she's done it, she's doing it. You know, I just felt incredible inspiration from her. I've been inspired by so many people, but this woman that I met, you know, we were talking one day, we were leaving the hospital together, and she said to me, oh, she's very, very fearful of how she was experiencing things. And she said to me, oh, you know, Robyn, the terrible thing is we get diagnosed with this dreadful disease, and it ruins our lives. And I didn't say anything because she was in her moment expressing, but the words were jammed in my mouth, trying not to fly out. I don't think it's ruined my life. I don't think it, I don't feel it, I don't believe it. I feel, if anything, it's actually given me my life, because shit gets really real, and you know, things that I thought were important are not. Things. Can you
talk a little bit about that, and what are the new life choices that you're exploring?
I'm not so hard on myself anymore. I'm not I was a big people pleaser, and I still have that tendency. You know, I'd put anyone and everyone before myself, and then I'd be exhausted, and then I'd be resentful and angry, and because I had no energy for myself. You know, I really thought that if I did things for people, that would make me worthy and lovable. And what I've come to learn is that it's really about how I feel about myself, you know, how I love myself. And the most loving thing that I can do is sometimes say no, you know, and mean it, put some boundaries down, not push myself, not run my life like one just exhaustive to-do list. Money has been an interesting thing for me because I don't work, you know, learning that there's I don't have to have a job to be someone or something, or, you know, it's the first thing, you know, that people speak about when that, you know, when you meet someone new and they say, oh, what do you do? You know, and that means, what do you do for work? And learning to be comfortable with saying, well, actually, I don't work, you know, the horror of, well, because it's confronting to people, you know, so it's been, you know, coming to accept those choices that I've made not to work.
You did used to have a job that you sort of identified with.
I identified with massively. Yeah, I had a really big job. I was a public servant for 18 years. I worked in police. You know, I had a big job. I was a PA, and I identified with it hugely. And at some point, a while before I left that job, I used to wonder, who would I be if I wasn't doing this? And because it came with a certain, I don't know, a little bit of notoriety, I guess. in a funny way. And people valued me because of that job.
Yeah.
Valued me because of that job. So I felt like it was inherently part of me and my importance, you know.
What I'd love to share about this is, so you hadn't been working for quite a few years before this diagnosis. It's not as if you chose to stop working because of the diagnosis.
No.
A lot of people find themselves in that situation and then they think their job's the cause of it.
Yeah.
And something that I always sort of look to you and say, Robyn, can you share more? Is that you have been a big earner. You've been very independent, and you know that it's not all about the money now.
Not at all. Not at all.
So when we've got people who are feeling stuck and tied to their job, you share so much wisdom and heart in your experience.
I was miserable in my job. I was absolutely miserable. I was lonely in it. I was running on adrenaline. I worked incredibly long hours. I had a lot of responsibility and pressure on me.
You just shared with me that you didn't get your first phone until 2018.
Yeah.
Because you didn't
that's
want
one of the things I didn't, I mean, in the business that I was in, you know, we had to sort of virtually be available 24/7. And I refused to get a mobile phone because they would give to me, you know, it would be a work phone, because I just didn't want to. It was sort of like the last thing I could do, the last stand I could take to maintain something of myself, because I'd given everything else, but I just didn't want them impacting on my time, even though they were, because it was always in my head away when I was not in the office. You know, I just used to think I'm spending 10, 12 hours here a day. If that's not enough, you know, and I'll just say this, when I left, they replaced me with 3 people. Like, they got 3 people to do my job. So that's how hard I was working. But I was miserable. I was earning huge money. And the one thing, and I knew this before I left, the one reason I stayed there was because of blind fear. Nothing else. I could not imagine my life without that job and that money. I couldn't imagine what I would do if I wasn't doing that. I could not see my way out of it. And it was blind fear that kept me there. And then eventually I was offered a voluntary redundancy, which I grabbed with both hands and ran. But it was I actually didn't have the guts to leave of my own volition. I had
to break up with you.
Yeah, virtually.
Interesting.
There's part of it that had manifested it. I'd said it, I wanted it. I'd asked for a sign that I was going to get it. I had to wait about 4 years, but it happened. It happened exactly how I wanted it to happen. But you know,
had to let go of the timing of it.
Yeah. But I sort of did go through an identity crisis, of course, you know, because I went from running at 1,000,000 miles an hour to, well, I stopped insofar as not going into the office every day, but my body was still running on adrenaline.
Yeah. It takes a while, that example of the ceiling fan.
Yeah.
Turn it off, but it doesn't stop spinning immediately. Yeah. It has to wind down.
Yeah.
Something that came to my mind as you were sharing that is that this is a sort of a metaphor, analogy, an example, because, you know, I see everything as one. This example can play out elsewhere in your life, is that people often, out of fear, don't know who they're going to be if they actually heal from an experience, a trauma, an event in their life. And it's very similar. Who am I without this job, this identity? Because so long I've identified as this person who experienced this trauma. And not that we're ever asking people to forget that time in your life, because it's landed you where you are today in the most beautiful way. But we don't need to be held back by those experiences. You know,
the interesting thing, I was really worried about money. Not that I have I was really worried about not earning that money. And it doesn't, I know I'm in a different situation. I'm in a fortunate situation, but it doesn't matter that I don't earn that money anymore. It hasn't changed it hasn't changed who I am. Like the money wasn't making me happy. It was giving money gave me choice, didn't give me happiness.
And actually, so someone just floated in the background there. And I just wanted to ask, and he's more than welcome to jump on if he wants to be on the visual podcast, but I do feel like Steve deserves quite a bit of credit. I find that he's been incredibly supportive of you making the choices that you have. I can see his shadow maybe floating over.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, he's got to go and get his eyes tested. It's not.
He's not coming over.
I love his moment on the camera.
Damn it. Well,
look, my husband has been incredible. This has been a really, to come back to the cancer experience, it's been a really incredible experience for him as well, because his mother passed away when he was 17 from cancer. So, he's sort of had to cycle, or maybe not even cycle back. Maybe he hadn't really dealt with a lot of stuff to do with his mum's passing, and it's sort of come through again, and it's in his face, and he's had to work on his own stuff around a significant woman in his life, being diagnosed with cancer. So, it's brought up major experiences of healing for him as well. But I'm very fortunate that I have a husband that is willing to look at himself and deal with his stuff. And he wasn't into anything spiritual or anything, not really before he met me, but he's open to it. He's embraced it. It's actually really funny. My sister and I went to an afternoon at a club a couple of weeks ago to get readings from two mediums. They had two mediums up the front, 30 people paid $50 each to, hopefully get a reading. And I got a reading the person that came through for me was my first boyfriend, who passed away in 2019 from cancer. But he came through loud and clear. It wasn't anyone else. It was absolutely him. He's hysterical. It was funny. And when I came home, I said, my husband Steve said to me, "Did you get a reading, Robyn?" And I'm like, "Yeah, guess who came through?" He said, bloody Matthew. And I was like, yes. And we laughed because, Matthew's a significant part of my life still.
What was the message? Can you share it?
Yeah. It was actually incredible. She qualified him by saying, she said to me, "I've got a man here who went young. He went too soon," she said, "and it happened very fast." And I had thought about him before I went in, but my sister said, "It's Matthew." And I said, "I think I know it is." She said he had problems with his left hand, right hand, right side of his body. He had problems with his hand. Can you take that? And it clicked. He had a brain tumor, and initially they didn't diagnose it straight away. They didn't know what it was, but because of the tumor pressing on his brain, he lost sensation in his right arm. So he'd be doing things like he'd be driving he was a plasterer, and he literally couldn't make his arm work. And I remember him telling me that, when I went and saw him. So when she said the bit about it, was very strongly him. Yeah, what she said, this sort of leans into what I've spoken to about before. She said, he's saying that he never believed in any of this. He never believed in any of this spiritual stuff. He just thought it was rubbish. And that it was not something he believed in, but she said he's very, very glad that you believed in it. He's very happy that you have, she said, because he's saying in the last 14 months you have leaned on this stuff, your spiritual side, on all the people around you so heavily, more than you've ever had to. You've leaned on it, and he is so happy that you have, because it's supporting you, and to not give up on it, to stick with it, because it's all there for you, supporting you. And that was exactly, that's what I've been talking about today. So it was a tick of, confirmation of I'm in the right place with this. He was a staunch, he was raised a Catholic. There was no way he believed in any of this stuff.
But now he's on the other side. So
now he's on the other side. Yeah, but he's often been around me. I dream about him. I just take a lot of heart from him, and he was my first boyfriend when I was 16, and we maintained a connection. I spent a bit of time with him before he passed. I came back to New Zealand to see him. My husband, very supportive of that. My husband knew him. It's all around.
So beautiful. I often think of, what do I want to call this podcast? When I'm in it, I rarely think of the title beforehand, but I'm thinking something along the lines of leaning on my team. But then of course there's a deeper story behind that, but we'll have a chat and we'll work out what feels good as well. You can name this podcast if you want.
Oh gosh.
I just want to clarify, you had a PET scan not that long ago, and you got the all clear, and you celebrated, which was amazing. Is there anything you want to share on that, or is there anything, because I know you did take some notes because you really wanted to share a lot today, is there anything you want to add?
Just a couple of things. I joined a group in about September last year, run by a woman in New Zealand called Justine Laidlaw. She goes under the name The Natural Bird. She did a radical remission course, which, Cynthia Mansfield had actually done it as well. And it was based on the 10 points that were to do with Dr. Kellyanne Turner, an incredible group of people, mostly women, one man, who were all having cancer experiences. And we just go through each of those points and we just connect. I have to admit that when I first got into that group, it sort of scared the shit out of me. Everyone talking about cancer all the time. And I did what I've done my whole life, is try in my mind separate myself and go, I'm not like you. and then had to learn the grace of no, actually we're all in this together. I'm not better or worse or anything, and there was some great stuff to learn from that group. So I found a lot of heart and a lot of support in that space. And I think in some ways it turned me back to dealing again with the fears, some of the fear and stuff that I had, maybe on a deeper level again, just going deeper and deeper into it. So I was incredibly grateful for that. I have come to, one of the things that I got from that group is, because there's so many things that you can do in a healing way. There were people doing infrared and oxygen and vitamin C, and all these things are valid and great, THC, whatever, everyone's doing all their different things. What I had to do and what I've done is to just not panic and feel like, oh my God, if I'm not doing that, then does that mean, and just really sit with what I'm doing, how I feel about what I'm doing. I don't need to throw the kitchen sink at it. I just get into being very comfortable with the choices that I'm making and going for it from there. And some new information might come to me about something and I might think, oh, I might try that. But not feeling like I have to be on every supplement, every whatever because then I'm just coming from panic. And it's not coming from the right place. So that was a really that's been a really, really great experience, because I've sort of really fine-tuned how I'm doing things, and something might drop off and something else might come along.
I love that, because going down, getting all these IV treatments and all the natural therapies can be incredibly expensive. And I remember at times it's quite challenging to not throw ideas at someone. But I remember getting this feeling from you, because I'm like, hey, Robyn, I keep suggesting this oncology naturopath to you, but just let me know if you don't want to, because sometimes I don't know if you're like, if the information's landed because you've got so much coming to you. But I really saw like you didn't do a whole bunch of natural therapies. I think you had a bit of acupuncture through the Lifehouse. That was a trial. But some people might feel disadvantaged with certain treatments because they feel like they can't afford the IV and all this kind of stuff. But actually, again, you're creating evidence that you don't need to go down that route. And what I will share with people is, whether you choose chemical, natural, alternative, conventional, you've got to be happy with the choice that you've made, or find a way of coming to peace with it, rather than feeling like you've got to take it all, because that's, again, a very masculine approach to self-care and nurturing yourself through this part of your journey.
Well, to come back to that point too, is that originally what I said earlier is, I was doing everything in the world and I still got diagnosed with cancer. And what was the question? What did that tell me? To come back to love and to work with my emotions, to work with the deeper stuff that, I maybe thought maybe I had done a little bit, but not to the depth of the level that I've done it now. And certainly not with the tools. I mean, what I've taken from releasing is incredibly powerful to me. When I think back about releasing with that chemotherapy, when I think back to releasing with that with radiation, which again wasn't a picnic. In some ways I actually found it a bit more stressful than taking chemotherapy. But just releasing the emotion around it, the fear, the anxiety.
Because what we think versus the messages that come through can be very different. And then eventually it gets to a point where what you think is actually coming from a clear and grounded place, and the message is one of the same. Yeah.
And just working that tension out of my body. That's something that I really got from Cole, in the coaching space with you, is, because she was so about getting energy out of your body through sound and through movement. And I have found that so helpful. I still do that. I even found it yesterday when I was at the gym, because my shoulder is a little bit funny, and just even the way I was moving my body was just to move the energy, and I know people are looking at me thinking, what's she doing? Shaking and
you're probably beyond the point of caring.
I'm changing my vibration, people. But and just to also bring back to vibration, that one of the things I also did was I took a few essences, bark flower essences in particular. Actually, I didn't take them. I held the bottles and I just sensed into the vibration of whatever they were. And I said affirmations that came with the particular essences that I was taking. I use a pendulum a lot to douse what's good for me, what's right for me. And the two essences that I took particularly, and I just found this profound for a couple of reasons. The two essences that I took for a very, very long time, which were holly, bark flower essences were holly, and the energy of holly, that of the bark flower essences, is divine love. And it's I'll read just what it says: all-encompassing love, love that maintains the world and is a greater reason than human reason. The love is the highest energy quality through which and in which we all live. It is our true life elixir, the greatest healing power, and the strongest motivational force. You know, and when I doused that essence for myself, I thought, holy shit, you know, like if I'm saying I had to learn to love myself and the love not only of me but of, and then I douse that essence and I'm straight on it. I'm just on it. You know, like it solidifies my belief in
It's holly.
and holly. And the other one was Star of Bethlehem. And, you know, I think about that just from a religious point of view, you know, that star that guided them, you know, it's like a guiding light. And the energy of Star of Bethlehem essence is restoration. And it's about soul potential, awakening, and orientation. And I just thought, yeah, I mean, this is what this experience is, you know, anything is possible in it. And, you know, I found like something that I learned really quickly through it was like 1 + 1 does not equal 2. The whole healing experience is not linear. It's all over the place. And that has called for me to have to surrender. And just like, I thought if I did this, then that would happen.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
Expectation.
But something may even bigger happened.
Yeah.
Or bigger, you know? Yeah. So surrender's been a big part of it too. And
Amazing.
to keep on surrendering, you know?
Yeah. It's not as if the cancer journeys are over and then that's it. There's still a lot of life to embrace.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share, beautiful Robyn?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I hope I've just covered what I need to.
I feel you have. It's been amazing, and I probably should have reminded people that there's a visual version and where they can really watch, and just your energy is amazing. I love having you in my groups. I love being able to have this conversation with you. I'm very grateful that you are going to be on the podcast, and whoever needs to listen to this can listen to this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually don't have anything else to say, but thank you. And it's been incredible, and it's been a pleasure watching your journey. It's been a real honor as well to be part of it. And a huge credit to you for choosing yourself to continue to do this deeper emotional work, the spiritual work, and not just to throw your hands up and then get engulfed down one pathway.
Oh, it's been my guiding light, Jen. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's been, well, nothing, like I said when I started, it's not by accident for me. It's all happening exactly as it was supposed to. You know, I just don't think it's by chance that you're in my life. I think we were always destined to meet in some way, shape or form, and we did, you know. And yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for you and for all of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robyn.